Is Putin serious about using a nuke, or is he a bluffer who doesn't really have the capability? The last time Russia successfully tested a nuclear bomb was in 1961 when the Tsar bomber was dropped over the Arctic. It worked, but there was no possibility of it being used as a weapon. It was too big, too heavy, and modern radar would know it was coming. The bomb was invented purely because US technology was steaming ahead of USSR, and Khrushchev at the time was enraged about Russia's lack of innovation. So the dictator had an idea to produce a massive bomb in a vain attempt to scare their perceived enemies in the West. Its invention coincided with the election of John Kennedy, and what followed was the Cuban Missile Crisis. USSR and now Russia are desperate to remain relevant, and the nuclear threat is used regularly, especially when they appear to be losing or shamed. How often, you may ask? Many more times than you might think, as the video will prove. The nuclear bluffs are legendary, but to this day politicians fall for them. Here's the latest. On the 18th of November, the US agreed to long-range weapons being used to hit Russian targets, and an angry Sergei Markov, advisor to Putin, appeared on Times Radio to scream about nuclear retaliation. This led to a ballistic weapon being sent from Russia which hit Dnipro. As a reminder of previous posturing by Putin, here's the timeline of Russian nuclear threats over the past decade. March 2014, America threatens sanctions over the invasion of Crimea. Propagandist Dmitry Kizelyov speaks on his TV show and says, Russia is the only country in the world that is realistically capable of turning the United States into radioactive ash. May 8, 2014, and Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Rogozin claims he was barred from Romanian airspace. He announced, I will return in a Tu-160 strategic bomber with the biggest payload. In July 2014, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned that Russia could resort to nuclear weapons if Ukraine tried to retake Crimea. In September 2014, Kiev's Minister of Defense, Valery Helete, said they'd received threats of nuclear retaliation from Russia if they continued to fight pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. Putin also mentioned potential nuclear conflict when he boasted to Russian school kids that week. Thank God, I think no one is thinking of unleashing a large-scale conflict with Russia. I want to remind you that Russia is one of the leading nuclear powers. March 2015. Russia threatened to aim nuclear missiles at Danish warships if Denmark joins NATO's missile defense system. In comments Copenhagen called unacceptable, and NATO said would not contribute to peace. Defense Minister Mark Liddeberg said Denmark would contribute radar capacity on its warships, which is designed to protect members from missile launches. In May 2015, Russia planned to deploy nuclear-capable missiles in Kaliningrad near Poland's border and threatened to move nuclear forces to Crimea. Vladimir Putin said in May 2018 that Russia would be forced to target any European countries that agreed to host USA's nuclear missiles, following Washington's withdrawal from a landmark Cold War-era arms control treaty. Putin held talks with Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte of the far-right Five Star Party. Putin said, I want to discuss with Trump the dangerous US plans to leave the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. The Russian president's remarks came after the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Moscow was in material breach of the Cold War-era treaty. A 60-day ultimatum for Russia to correct the alleged violations was issued. Otherwise, the US would quit the 1987 accord, considered an historic milestone in reducing the threat of a nuclear war in Europe. December 2018. Putin held his annual question time and said the whole of civilization could collapse and maybe even the planet further to Trump's threat to withdraw from the Intermediate Missile Treaty. In February 2019, Putin threatened nuking Washington after President Trump said that he'd withdraw from the long-standing Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, citing Russia cheating on the deal for years by building and fielding the banned weapons. Russia denied its violation of the deal. Putin ironically warned US policymakers, saying, some were obsessed with US exceptionalism. Putin rambled on. Russia will be forced to create and deploy types of weapons in respect of those territories where the centers of decision-making are located, meaning Washington, D.C. In February 2019, Vladimir Putin said Russia is militarily ready for a Cuban Missile-style crisis if the United States wanted one, and threatened to place hypersonic nuclear missiles on ships or submarines near USA's territorial waters. The Cuban Missile Crisis erupted in 1962 when Moscow responded to a US missile deployment in Turkey, and USSR responded by sending subs to Cuba. February 2019. Russian TV listed US military facilities Moscow would target using a hypersonic missile to hit them in less than 5 minutes. The targets included the Pentagon and the presidential retreat in Camp David, Maryland. Russia invades Ukraine in February 2022, and President Vladimir Putin puts Russia's nuclear deterrent on high alert in the face of a barrage of Western reprisals. White House press secretary calls President Vladimir Putin's bluff after he orders putting Russian nuclear forces on high alert. This is a pattern of Moscow manufacturing threats to justify aggression, Jen Psaki said. We've seen him do this time and time again. At no point has Russia been under threat from NATO, nor has Russia been under threat from Ukraine, Psaki added. It's still February 2022, and Russian propagandist Dmitry Kiselov is back on TV. Our submarines are capable of launching over 500 nuclear warheads, which guarantees the destruction of the US and all NATO countries. Why do we need the world if Russia is not in it? Kiselov spouted. Again in February, Putin said on TV, to anyone who would consider interfering from the outside, if you do, you will face consequences greater than any you have faced in history. 1 month later, in a confusing message, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Russia would resort to nuclear weapons only in the case of a threat to the existence of his country, and not as a result of the current conflict with Ukraine. We have a security concept that very clearly states that only when there is a threat for existence of the state will we actually use nuclear weapons. Putin sounded off about Sweden and Finland joining NATO. Russia has repeatedly warned Finland and Sweden against joining NATO. The serious military and political consequences of such a move would oblige Russia to restore military balance by strengthening its defenses in the Baltic Sea region, including by deploying nuclear weapons. Sweden and Finland ignored him and joined NATO. July 22nd. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev told the United States that attempts by the West to punish a nuclear power such as Russia for the war in Ukraine risked endangering humanity. July 22nd again. Medvedev, in a seemingly drunken rage, said, "Some exalted bloody clowns also try to threaten us. I mean the attack on the Crimea. If something like this happens, there will instantly come the day of judgment. Very fast and toilful. It will be very difficult to hide." September 22nd. Putin said that when the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, to protect Russia and our people, we will certainly use all the means at our disposal. It's not a bluff, he added, after bluffing about nuking everyone for years. Sergei Markov, an ex-advisor to Vladimir Putin, claimed UK cities could be a nuclear target for the Russian president and blamed the Ukraine war on the West. He launched the bizarre shouty rant on the BBC Today programme. He also accused Western countries of using Ukrainian soldiers as slaves. October 2022, Dmitry Medvedev said any weapons in Moscow's arsenal, including strategic nuclear weapons, could be used to defend territories incorporated in Russia from Ukraine. In another rant, Medvedev threatened nuclear apocalypse, and that this time it's definitely not a bluff. Excuse me while I yawn. In October, Ramzan Kadyrov, self-styled warlord in Russia's region of Chechnya, said Moscow should consider using a low-yield nuclear weapon in Ukraine after a major new defeat on the battlefield. Kadyrov slammed top commanders for their failings, saying, "In my personal opinion, more drastic measures should be taken, like the use of low-yield nuclear weapons." October 22nd, Evgeny Fedorov of the Russian State Duma quite fancied bombing Nevada for a change. The rocket that will strike Nevada could be a rocket without a warhead, or it could be a nuclear explosion, since the site in Nevada is a nuclear testing site. This is our legal right to retaliate. If Ukraine is admitted into the US-led NATO military alliance, then the conflict in Ukraine would be guaranteed to escalate into World War III. He doesn't seem aware that the area hasn't been used for tests since 1992. Oh dear. October 22nd, if Ukraine is admitted into the US-led NATO military alliance, then it would be guaranteed to escalate into World War III, a Russian Security Council official was quoted as saying. November 22nd, Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said facilities were being built to accommodate new missile systems. Russia has the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world, with close to 6,000 warheads, he said. He has recently been fired. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Monday that NATO was a serious threat to Russia, and the West's positions risked a direct clash between nuclear powers with catastrophic consequences. December 22nd. Putin pointed out plans for delivering a preemptive disarming strike with hypersonic systems. So far, the United States do not have them, while we do, he added. Note going forward to 2024, and Russian President Vladimir Putin suffered an embarrassing setback as his Satan II nuclear arsenal failed 4 out of 5 missile tests, according to arms experts and satellite imagery from the launch site. High-resolution satellite images of the launch pad at Russia's Plesetsk test site, where the RS-28 Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile exploded, shows extensive damage. A crater approximately 60 meters wide at the launch silo, along with visible damage in the surrounding area, was clearly seen. January 2023. Russian Orthodox Patriarch and former KGB agent Kirill joined Medvedev in saying world will end if Russia uses nukes. March 25th. Russia will station tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus, President Vladimir Putin said, sending a warning to NATO over military support for Ukraine and attempting to escalate a standoff with the West. March 27th. Kremlin super hardliner Nikolai Patrushkev, considered a mastermind of the Ukraine invasion, warned that Russia has the weapons to destroy any enemy, including the United States. Washington is underestimating Moscow's nuclear might, he moaned. April 25th. Risks of a direct military confrontation between the two nuclear powers, Russia and the United States, are steadily growing according to Vladimir Yermakov, the Foreign Ministry's head of nuclear non-proliferation. He told the Russian state news agency that Washington is escalating the risks through its conduct with Moscow. June 21st. Aggressive policies by the United States and NATO could result in a direct clash between nuclear powers, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said. June again, and Putin's mentor and far-right thinker Sergei Karapanov predicts there is no choice left but for nuclear apocalypse. The nuclear bombing enthusiast Sergei decried the decadence and corruption of the West while wearing the best silk Italian suits, ties with matching handkerchief and a Swiss watch at all times. He has his standards. July 13th. Ukraine is exploiting F-16 fighter jets capable of carrying nuclear weapons, viewed by Russia as a Western threat in the nuclear sphere, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said. The United States plans to transfer F-16 fighter jets to the Kiev regime, and we have informed the nuclear powers, the United States, Britain and France, that Russia cannot ignore the ability of these aircraft to carry nuclear weapons. October 5th. Russia's retaliatory strike following a nuclear attack by a potential aggressor will leave the enemy with no chances of survival, Russian President Vladimir Putin said at Valdai. October 23rd. It seems that one can offer condolences to the Israelis, but not to the Palestinians, and there should be no pity for them. Children, women, the elderly are just consumables, Medvedev said with faux sympathy, while Russia targets civilians in Ukraine daily. The use of weapons of all types may soon escalate to nuclear arms, he threatened. October 30th, and Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu bored everyone with the same old threats at the 10th Xiangshan Security Forum. November 16th. Russia showed off by loading an intercontinental ballistic missile equipped with the nuclear-capable Avangard hypersonic glide vehicle into a launch silo in southern Russia. January 11, 2024. Medvedev warned that any Ukrainian attacks on missile launch sites inside Russia with arms supplied by the United States and its allies would risk a nuclear response from Moscow. Medvedev again threatened to nuke the US, the UK, Germany and Ukraine. He has repeatedly threatened to use nuclear weapons, but the threats have so far failed to materialize. His critics say that his statements are bluff rather than Russia's genuine plans and are intended to scare the West into making concessions. Medvedev plays the role of the late politician Vladimir Zhirinovsky, who was also famous for his misogynistic nationalist buffoonery. He too wanted to nuke countries such as Japan and cause a tidal wave to destroy the UK. He championed Saddam Hussein in Iraq as a democratic example. His antics in Russia must be missed since he died of COVID. The Kremlin has drawn up plans for the use of tactical nuclear weapons in the event of an invasion by enemies, including China, leaked military files reveal in the Financial Times. The 29 files outline potential conditions for the use of nuclear weapons to achieve an array of offensive goals. China also has similar plans for Russia. April 24th, and Putin said Ukraine had crossed a red line by hitting a radar system. The attack may have met one of the conditions determining the possibility of the Russian Federation using nuclear weapons, as set out by the 2020 presidential decree. Kovalkino is in the Mordovia Republic, some 360 miles from the Ukrainian border. Red line crossed. No action taken. Red line bluff proved again. May 24th, and President Lukashenko attends the victory parade in Red Square. We are closer than ever to a nuclear catastrophe. What should we do in this situation? For us and Russia, it's exclusively a weapon of deterrence. In August, in the long-running saga regarding Russian threats to use nuclear weapons, Biden told National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan to get on the line with the Russians. Tell them what we will do in response. The American president also reportedly contacted Putin directly in a message and warned of catastrophic consequences if Russia used nuclear weapons. For many months in 2024 up to the present, Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor to the President, has refused to allow long-range weapons to be used to target Russia due to fear of nuclear retaliation. The incidents and speeches made on this point runs into hundreds of hours. I can list them all. Please look at the evidence and make up your own minds. In November 2024, Trump was elected. Will he be fearful of Russian nuclear threats, or will he call their bluff? Please comment below. Thank you for watching to the end. Please like and subscribe. My channel is new and it gives me encouragement. Thank you and bye for now.